why I'm so nervous. So my day-to-day is speaking in front of people, but usually it's, all right, squat lower. Okay, you can do this, keep going for another 15, 20 minutes. So this is a little different, but I'm excited because when I was in college, that's when I first met Jesus. And it was all about what can I do? How often can I tell people about Jesus and about how he's affected my life? And so this is exactly what God said would happen. So I'm so excited. And it's really exciting because as I tell you about my story, it's within the context of, what someone would say is, not a traditional way to express the gospel. It's in a gym. It's with people kind of going through, in the moment, tough times of trying to get through a tough workout with people in their community. But I'll take a step back and talk a little bit more about myself in that I grew up in this area, a little bit further south in Tacoma. And it was just my mom and my brothers and I. And it was tough, but I didn't really know it. All I knew was that my mom loved me, that I had my brothers, but we did struggle a lot. And growing up, it was always told by my mom to my brothers and I that we would be great, that we would, it was just a very encouraging environment to grow up in, despite what was all around us. And so when I came to college, I knew that I wanted to do something great, but I didn't know how. And I got connected to InterVarsity and the fellowship and the community there. And I remember just being surprised that God was real. This whole time I remember telling myself that, God's just like Santa Claus. He's just someone that we think about as just a figure. And just looking around when my eyes were finally realizing that God is real, and I just felt like I had to tell everybody. And so, and reading the Bible literally is what I was trying to do. And the words that came out to me, a bunch of different things. But one of the things that was that Jesus went out and he preached and he proclaimed and he healed all that were sick and had disease. And I was like, wait, so is this figuratively or for real you did? And it was it felt like it was either he did it, all or nothing, either he did or he didn't. And so I decided to believe that he did. And what does that look like for me to play a part in that and believing that? And so going through college, taking the Bible literally, and believing that he was a healer, believing that he was all the things that he said he would be. And so then I left college and I knew that the only thing I knew was that I wanted to work within health because that was my focus, nursing and sociology, and I wanted to be able to express, Jesus. So I did, what anybody does, looking for a job outside of college, and I looked on Craigslist for searching for the keywords health and Jesus, and Brain Health and Fitness with Urban Impact came up, and that was in 2008. So it's been a while. And one of the things that I remember when I first walked into the gym was that God spoke to my heart that this is a place of healing. And but it was a very practical way of what it looked like. Yeah, Jesus went out to heal, and what does that look like for us day to day is all the areas of healing: physical, yes; emotional, social, relational healing. through their connection with the gym, our community's connection to the gym. And it's been really exciting. It's kind of like we're undercover sometimes because people don't, they're coming in, broken. They want to change something about themselves. And by the end, I've had many sessions where we end up praying, or we end up, in between sessions, expressing what's going on, beyond the physical. And it's really an opportunity for us to, as staff, to listen to what God would say. Maybe it is just squat, or maybe it is something else or something deeper. And that's been the highlight of my life and my time at the gym, is just to listen, to hear what God is going to do next, and to be able to talk with my staff to figure out how God is using their gifts to do whatever it is. And so the gym is just right next door. If you didn't see it, there's two facilities. There's CrossFit right next to this church, and then a little bit further north is a larger facility. And so we do what you would see at any other gym: personal training, small group training, classes like Zumba, yoga, cycling, and some nutrition coaching. And so what I'm saying is very practical and things that we would see, but you don't see the times where, last night, where we're praying for our members and just trying to figure out what God wants us to do next, beyond just helping people squat and connecting with their neighbors over exercise. So that's my spiel.
You mentioned squat a couple of times. It must be a big deal over there, huh?
Yeah.
This, in some ways, this feels like Sunday. Nobody sits in the front row. So I think next time we set up, Steve, we just won't put any tables in the front at all. Have them all across the back. Hey, good morning. Good to see each and every one of you. I have my hat on today because I'm trying to, I'm in midlife crisis. I'm trying to stay cool.
Jason Eds.
Yeah. Oh, can you turn the phone off, please? Thank you. Good to be here. Good to see you all this morning. Oh man, what did I say? Every year we have an annual retreat, and actually Alicia is kind of tasked with helping us to do something that helps us to build relationship and to get in to know each other, do something fun, so it's not all boring, because Steve talks a whole lot, right? And this year they had us do an exercise, and one of the questions was, what did you want to be when you grew up? And as I cogitated on that thought, I came up blank. Because I grew up in an environment where we did not dream about what could be, or what would be, or what we could do. So I never had a dream of being a firefighter or a police officer or being a doctor or lawyer. And I definitely didn't think about being president of the United States of America, right? But that's the environment that I found myself in. I went to 4 elementary schools, onto 3 junior high schools and 2 high schools. That's because we moved all the time. We never owned anything. We lived in 2 different public housing projects. In fact, we lived in one public housing project on 2 separate times. We lived there, we moved, and we came back, kind of a deal. And I grew up, most of you don't know, but my mother was a heroin addict, and she died at the age of 39, so I lost her when I was a really young guy. And that was kind of where we were, and we just did all this stuff that didn't lead us anywhere. I guess it led us somewhere, to nowhere, right? We were on the road to nowhere, and because of that, actually it taught me a number of things about survival and about commitment and all. But when I was 20, I had this encounter with this person called Jesus, and the message of Jesus radically transformed who I was and how I saw things and how I perceived myself and how I perceived others. And so this incredible thing happened because somebody had the temerity or the guts to show me Jesus' plan and perspective, and I was able to contrast that with where I was and what I had been exposed to, what I'd been taught, and the whole nine. And I was doing this, and I realized, I think I want that. There's more promise there. There's more love there. There's more healing there. There's more vision there. There's more this there. And as a result of it, at the age of 20, I made a bona fide commitment to Jesus. And I say bona fide because I had never played with Jesus. I wasn't in, I wasn't out, I wasn't up one day, down the next day, moving crossways, trying to be just on the periphery of Jesus. I was in Jesus because my situation growing up was so dire, you were in it. We didn't play with poverty, we were poverty. Eh? You know, some folks say we were so poor we couldn't afford the second O and R, right? And we were a welfare family and the whole nine, but when I committed my life to Jesus, that became really a pivotal, I can't speak, trust me, pivotal moment in my life. And after that happened, I got this desire to want to be a person who loved Jesus, did everything they could to tell somebody else about what I had found, what I had discovered, or what had happened to me. And that's my life's passion, is to tell people about Jesus. I just hope that down through the years I've learned a few different ways to do that. And because all that we do with Urban Impact, I often say, give us an excuse to bump into people, and as we bump into them, we have the occasion to share Jesus with them. And nobody can argue with my testimony about how God transforms and changes. I can't tell you how the universe works, how the stars work. I don't know nothing about quadratic equations, and I even forgot my decimals, right? But I know how God has transformed my life, and so hopefully I'll do a good job at doing that. But part of that is I grew up in basically an all-black community. There are parts of San Francisco where I grew up that we never went to. I mean, we knew it was there, but we never visited. We were stuck in this place, so our engagement with others was extremely limited. So I grew up with the black experience, so ain't too proud to beg, you know, woo, please don't leave me, girl, don't you? You can tell what generation I came from. Temptations, baby, the Spinners, come on, Earth, Wind, and Fire, come on, the Emotions, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. What's that lady name with the big hair, Diana Ross, and the Supremes coming from out of Detroit, right? And so that was my experience, so it was kind of limited. But when I got into Jesus, my wife and I are married in 1977. We are what, 44.9 years old together. So we'll celebrate 45 years in January. And we started dating through this group. And it was a multi-ethnic contemporary gospel group. White, black, Italian. We had a Hawaiian cat in the group and a Filipino cat in the group. And we started traveling to these white churches. Black churches don't pay you to minister. They want you to come, but it's always for free. And the white churches will at least give you a love offering so you can pay for your gas and keep your equipment up. So we sing in a lot of white churches. So I started engaging in that environment and noticed just the differences that there were. And why do I just say that? I'm not going to say much about that, but it began to help me understand, because the church I was in was black-led church. It was predominantly black, but not exclusively. But my pastor brought every kind of preacher in that you can think of, male, female, Asian, Hispanic, you name it, Irish. And he would always say, I do this because you need to know that God moves and speaks and uses people in different ways. Our way is not the only way. And it opened me up to this idea that maybe God's kingdom was bigger than it is. And so I am tasked with helping to lead some of the reconciliation work. So in 2020, on February 23rd, I believe it was, when Ahmaud Arbery was killed. We found out about it as a nation, I think, in April. And when he was killed, a president of a Christian university put a Facebook post out that said, "Oh, I'm so sorry this has happened." And I hit him back and said, "We need more than sympathy, baby. We need some action. We need somebody to stand up and speak out." So he direct messaged me, because we had never spoken before, and asked if he could get my number. So he called me right away, and we talked. And I said, I posted what I did because it's time for the evangelical church to stand up and speak out against all the heinous things that's happening in our nation across ethnic lines. We must be. Other churches are speaking out, but we have been definitely silent. And I said, and I meant what I said. talking is not enough, right? We need some action. And so he wrote a letter on behalf of his institution, his university. And I said, that's good, but it's not enough. It needs to be broader. The church needs to respond. Make the long story short, on May 20th, there's a 2-page ad taken out in the Seattle Times, signed and endorsed by over 200 white evangelicals. We could have gotten more, but the ad was very costly. And then we also had the same ad put in 2 black-owned newspapers as well. One here, one in Tacoma, and actually down in Portland as well. Because we wanted the church to stand up and confess that they've been absent. Right? And then we wanted them to lament with us, not just feel sorry for us, but to lament. And then thirdly, wanted to commit to taking action. I believe that the church has an opportunity to help bring some healing to our nation ethnically. If we accept God's challenge. Because it's God's will that we would be one as he and the Father were one. Not white one, not black one, not Hispanic one, not Asian one, but that we would be one. But it's going to require that we engage with each other very differently. But we have to take God seriously. So let me just end with this. We have a couple things that we try to do to lead this direction. We have done what we call a Life Together series, and we've dealt with just racism. We dealt with biracial stuff and multiracial stuff and cross-racial marriages. We've dealt with the role of media in identity formation, because you would be surprised at how the media treat white criminals compared to black criminals. And if you ever just Google it, you'll be surprised how nicely they talk about kids who have killed somebody. He was a nice kid who just made a mistake. But generally, every black person he's got all this other stuff underneath that they bring out. That's got to change. Because we need equity. How many, you raise your hand, you know what probity is, right? Probity. Come on, raise your hand. Probity, yeah. It means what? Integrity, honesty, and uprightness. That's what we need in our communication with each other. So we have this Wrestling with Reconciliation call that we do every month, and we're on this call and we're talking about things that matter to the kingdom and how we can work together to demonstrate, if you will, and live into God's vision for unity that he prayed for in John 17. And we have something that we call navigating white identity, because some of us don't realize how complicit we have been in what's happened, because it's so natural. When I used to dress, I used to have the matching socks, I used to have the matching tie, the matching hanky. If I wore a hat, it would be matching too, because that's what you did when you dressed up, right? Some of what we do is so natural to us, we don't even think about it. And sometimes it's in conversation that we realize, oh, so I didn't realize I was training my sons to not like white people. Because I never set them down and said, look, son, I have 2 sons. Listen, fellas, we're going to hate the white race. Not once. But the way I acted, the way I did, the way I engaged or didn't engage, taught them something about some of my disdain. Because I did not like white people before Jesus. Okay. Oh, is it okay if I be honest about me? But Jesus changed that. Amen. Jesus changed that. And I'll end with this. So we have navigating white identity. We've got this Wrestling with Reconciliation, and we're committed to helping churches. And I've been meeting with several groups. In fact, when I leave here, I'm going to Tacoma to meet with another about 30 black and white pastors, Hispanic pastors, because we're trying to get leaders to understand they have a role in helping the church heal, helping our cities heal, amen, and ultimately our nation is going to heal because we're engaged in that which is God's idea. I love it when it says in John 17, I want them to be one as we are one. Because, if you ever see the phrase 2 words, so that's a purpose clause, so that they will know. He says that twice. So our coming together as a family of God, is not about us. It's about God using that to speak to people who think we can never, ever be what? So anyway, we can say more about that, but he told me I only had 5 minutes, so I took 6.
And you took 20, but that's all right.
All right. Hey, give me some love. Amen. All right, we got a few minutes. Call it 5, we'll take 20 for questions and answers. I'll give you the mic. If you have something, raise your hand, and so that they can hear you. We can get it on the recording. I remember that time we had, I think you're talking about Joe Castleberry, speak to us earlier that year, and we talked about when that came out. We saw your note, and when he responded with, okay, something's going on. That's when we made that year, our year reconciliation talks
And
too.
let me say one thing. And as a result of Ahmed Arbery's death, my wife and I were actually on vacation. I think I was on a cruise, so my phone was turned off. When I got back to port, I had all these calls and text messages from white leaders saying, I'm sorry, it's happened again. And then 6 days later is when the 6 cops were killed in Dallas. And to our surprise, it was a black man that gunned them all down. Because we don't do mass murders. Okay, generally we don't. And when I came back, I started meeting with various leaders. And my one question is, what's it gonna take for us to be the family of God? And that's the question I'm asking every single time I meet with people. What's it gonna take? What do I have to lay down, give up, become to be the family of God?
Thank you all so much. This has been not only inspiring, but edifying and illuminating. And we could listen to you all a lot longer, including Steve. So, Harvey, wanted to ask you, and thank you for being so honest, which is so badly needed. I was curious if you wouldn't mind sharing, what was it about white people that was hardest for you before you met Jesus? As a learning for us.
Well, I think it was the engagement. If my dad were alive, he'd be 95 years old. My dad lived through the Depression, he lived through lynching, he lived through Jim Crow laws, he lived through the separate this, separate that. And while most of my life, I grew up in California, so I never experienced that. But he was born in Texas. And so he did, and when he was in the military, he would go through the back door of the restaurant while his white counterparts went to the front. And it was just the way we engage with people, because the way we thought about each other, that created this thing in me. Who do they think they are? I remember being in school having to go to this other classroom. Later on, I found out, it was special ed. I was not special ed. I was smart, baby. A little more active, a little more energetic, baby, but not special ed. I didn't have ADD, AAAHD. But we noticed with time how we were, and then I don't like policies. They'll tell you now, I'm fussing all the time. Don't bring a policy to me that locks me into poverty. Move me forward or upward. So all the political stuff that's designed to keep me like here, I'm not for that. I only want to engage with those things that move us upward. So that created this kind of animosity in me. I'll tell you one story. So when Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was killed, I was in junior high school. We were angry because we saw that a white man had killed him. We went to school the next day, we beat up on white boys. I don't remember if we did anything to the girls, but we kicked them, we socked them, we punched them, we pushed them downstairs. Let me say, that was in my BC days, before Christ. All right, before Christ. And that was the kind of animosity that was there, because we saw the difference in how we were treated, and who got the special treatment and who got the other treatment, right? And so that fed into just that kind of disdain. But when I came to Jesus, I realized all of that was off. I was off, because when I encountered those young men, I realized at that point I was not seeing them through the lens of God. And when we don't see each other through the lens of God and Jesus, it's easy for us to mistreat each other.
I really appreciate hearing your stories, because knowing a couple of you, but not all of you, it's very encouraging to see the diversity that you have on your staff, in terms of background, upbringings, experiences in life. My question for you all is, what would you say has been the biggest challenge of your diversity when you're working together?
I've been talking, so I'll let one of you all respond to that first.
Yeah, let me speak to that a bit, and thank you for recognizing the diversity here on the staff. I think the bigger challenge is as we engage the diversity beyond the four walls of the structure, right? And zip code 98118 is arguably the most diverse zip code in the United States. 59 different languages and dialects. Wide variety of people from all over the world live right here in the Rainier Valley, which provides beautiful diversity in terms of food experiences and retail experiences. However, that creates challenges as well. And even as diverse as our staff is, we can go just across the street, right? And engage or attempt to engage with the Somali restaurant just across the street, of which we don't share a language, of which we don't share a culture, and be challenged by that. And with all the diversity that is in the community that we serve, with its beauty comes that challenge of cultural and language barriers. So then you go, okay, how do we address that challenge? And we address that challenge one relationship at a time, one conversation at a time. So the first time I go into the Somali restaurant across the street, you get everybody in the restaurant that turns around going, who is this guy coming into our restaurant to do whatever he's coming in here to do? And then the next time you go, and it's that guy from across the street. Then the next time you go, it's like, wait a minute. What does he have to say that I might have some interest or commonality in? And with the building relationship becomes trust. And once you have trust through relationship, then there is the ability to converse and, as Pastor said, become one. So I would say that's the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is building relationship, and that comes one encounter at a time.
A couple things that come to my mind is comfort is a huge challenge, and preference.
Yep.
I'm engaged in conversations all the time, and I realize the only thing that separates us is political preference. And I like Fox News, and you like CNN, and we just carry that with us everywhere we go. And so it's really hard to put my preferences down. I like guitar, and I grew up in an area where you sing worship. It's about intensity and passion. And Harvey grew up and my wife both grew up in areas where it's about vocal quality. And so we'd be in worship, and I'm just entered in, and my wife's like, "Can you just sing, either don't sing or sing softer, because you're messing up my worship, because you don't carry a note, and you can't harmonize." And so, we have more conflict around our preferences, and what I'm comfortable with, the style, the engagement, to work cross culturally, it's just difficult. We've got probably the other biggest separation on our staff team is age. 3 of us on this stage are in 60 plus, and Alicia on our management team is comes from a different generation.
I didn't know Alicia was 60.
Carries with her, and so she hears oftentimes from our staff things that just bug us about the old guys. We're 3 men, and we have a bias that we carry with us that just naturally it comes out. We're not like, as Harvey said, it's not even trained into us. It's just part of we're born into sin, and part of that is being who we are. And so wrestling through that kind of being willing to put our preferences down being willing to be uncomfortable most of the time. Being willing to realize that the 30 and 40-year-old generation actually has wisdom that I need to listen to and take heed to, because that's unnatural for me. And it takes extra work to do that. Rose is in the crowd. We had a huge tussle over work at home, kind of remote working. And I grew up in a generation, if you're really at work, you're at work, like you're in the office. And if you really wanted to be at work, you'd be at work. And if you don't want to be at work, it's because you don't want to work. And COVID hit, and I had to I wrote an apology email and said, I have missed the boat on this, and I have judged everybody that wanted to work remotely as though they were somehow wanting to cheat the system, because they could then really do the things that and I've had to learn that I was wrong. That's really hard. I still want to believe that if you really want to work, you're at work. That's inbred in me. And to fight that tradition and say, people had a real value to, and they really valued work, they just wanted to manage it differently than I was raised, is hard. It's not comfortable. It's not my preference. And so I think that generational gap is as difficult as the ethnic gap, but they're all difficult, and they all mean I have to be wrong more than right, and I have to be uncomfortable. I think, Harvey will quote our political, somebody that said, part of the reason our political parties don't come together is they'll realize the other one might be right, or they might agree, and they can't sit in the same room and agree. They're just trained to be adversarial, and I think we really have to address that kind of comfort and preference and wanting to be right.
Alicia was going to say something, I think, too.
I sure was. Thanks for noticing. But I was going to say the same thing that you mentioned. The challenges, because you described, your question was the challenges amongst us being so diverse, and you've already mentioned it, Steve, of just age and gender, to be able to be comfortable to take the stage and to know that there's a spot to do it. And I think that it's improved, but that's definitely been a challenge over the years.
Time for a couple more questions.
Thank you, guys. Question is, Pastor Harvey, you mentioned particularly being able to confess and then being able to lament, as well as taking action. I think within confession there's probably an amount of knowledge or listening that we need to take place. But my question is, I think in some ways the world we live in is thought more deeply about what it looks like to connect to one another than we have in the church. And I'm wondering, what would it look like for us to be one in Seattle? What would it look like that they would be known by the way that they love one another? Can you paint a picture for us, or anybody, paint a picture? What does that look like in Seattle for us, the body of Christ, that is not one ethne, but is all reflecting the image of God? What does that look like in whatever details you can paint for us? What would that look like for us to be one in Seattle and in the region here?
Great question, Brian. I would start with under acknowledging the fact that we are all different. One of the biggest issues I have with people who want to be united is that they want to make everybody the same. We're not the same. God made us different. We have to acknowledge that and then learn to celebrate that. So for me, if we're going to be one, we recognize that there are variances in who we are, what we do, how we do. I was a part of the Billy. Actually, I prayed at a Billy Graham crusade, you guys. And I sat one chair away from him. Like, if I would have been closer, I'd have put my arm around and put my knee up and got that photo. But that didn't happen. But I remember when we were training for the crusade, at the end of the training, it was mostly white people in the room, but there were a few of blacks who were there. And so they said, let's sing a song. And so what the white guys say, okay. And what do we always sing when we're in a mixed crowd? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, right? And when we finished that stanza, one of the black pastors said, now let's sing it for real. And then he went in, amazing and we went into our black style, right? And somehow we have this inability to appreciate kind of the variances that we have. So I would start there. The second thing is that we wrap our hearts around how do we become less able to articulate the problem and more able to posit solutions? Because that's my problem with politicians. They talk about the issue and the problems ad infinitum. But what are the solutions? And I see a church that's united, beginning to lock our heads and our hearts together to really come up with solutions. Like we know that there's injustices in the criminal system. Can we together walk together to address that? Seattle has the 5th largest achievement gap in the nation, not just the state. There should be a multi-ethnic group going to the superintendent saying that needs to stop, and guess when? Now. And what do we do to help change that? So to me, reconciled church walking together in unity would begin to address issues that make opportunities available for everybody. I don't want you to give me nothing for free. I've never done that. Never done that. I disdain the welfare system in America because it demeans people and diminishes people in horrific ways. But I want to make sure that I have the same access and options and opportunities, right? So in a reconciled church, to me, we're looking at those things that will help us walk together and have access and opportunity. Now, BJ owned the franchise, I never have, so that means he might be a step or two ahead of me. Okay, cool, that's a decision you made. I'm not gonna disdain him because he may have had a little more than me, so I'll get mad at him. No. Just give me the opportunity and let me do what I want to do with that. So those are a couple things that I think we can do. And then I think we have to, if you go to Psalms 33, it says that God loves righteousness and justice, and the earth is filled with his love. If you go to Psalm 89:14, it says that the foundation of God's throne is righteousness and justice. If you go to Psalms 97:2, it says that the foundation of God's throne is righteousness and justice. I see the reconciled church embracing those two. One deals with how I am internally. The other is how I engage with people on the outside. And if we can ever get our heads and hearts around that together, I believe we can be a powerful movement, because we can do something that, number one, is God's priority and something that the world doesn't think we can do. That's just the start.
Say that one more time.
I said a bunch of that. What part of that you want? You want the T, the H, or the A? Yeah. The church can do something that's important to God that the world doesn't think can happen. This is why it's important for us to engage now. Don't feel bad about what we didn't do. Let's start where we are and make something happen from here, but by binding our hearts and our spirits and our heads together. So part of my confession is I have to confess that I misunderstood people. I have to confess that maybe I mistreated some people. If there's one guy in particular, he's a white guy, if I could find him, I would repent to him, because we did something really horrible to him when I was a young guy, right? So part of it is acknowledging, yeah, there's been some problems. We don't dwell there, right? And we can lament those things, but now we move to action. What can we do to lift things, to improve things, to move things forward? Brother Ed.
Great question.
Dan,
one more question, then we're gonna pray out formal session, and we usually would stay for as long as people want, as long as you guys have the room after. Brian's our newest member on the board, and we're thinking a lot about that. How can we go from prayer into the community? And we have.
Well, let me say, while you pass by, let me say one thing. Housekeepers, when they were enrolled, I love it because they were the one evangelical organization, I would say, that really acknowledged that there's some work that needed to be done across racial and economic lines. And they did a fair job at diversifying their deists. Obviously it was just men, but Hispanic and Asian and the whole nine. The problem I had with them is that they would mess up my clothes, because they would have these crusades and they would talk about this ethnic stuff, and Pope would start feeling really bad and sorry, and they would come and snot all over my shirt. And they would cry, "Brother, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." The bigger problem was nothing ever changed after the cry. So that's why I said it's got to be more than just sympathy and empathy, right? I want some action. I want you to do something that changes the condition that led us to where we are. And so for me, the church We've got to figure that part out. And so that's why we have to stand up and we have to speak out in faith and respectfully, right? And with some humility, right? Because we've messed up along the way too, but we've got to do something that moves the dial. So that's a great opportunity for the church. And I tell them, pastors all the time, start teaching about justice in your church, because since Ahmed died and George Floyd died, church has been trying to talk about, and they're being accused of being political. Why? Because we have never shown them that in Acts chapter 6, there were Grecian widows and Hebraic widows. And the Hebraic widows were getting better treated than the Grecian widows. They go, oh, that's just about leadership. So we talk about the diaconate and the start of deacons. No, that was an injustice issue. But we never helped our people see that. Right? There are other examples that we can go to as well. The one about fasting in Isaiah 58, read it. Again, a little slower. It's about justice. This is the kind of fast that you do, but this is the kind of fast that I want, that breaks this, that breaks that, that heals that builds that, right? But we've done a poor job at helping people see that God is committed to justice. That's why I started with those 3 texts in Psalms 33, 89, and 97, because the foundation of God's throne is righteousness and, somebody say it with me, justice.
Justice.
Yeah.
Steve wanted to comment on this too, I think.
I was just gonna do a little commercial. The reason that we put together a group after George Floyd's death called the White People Working Group internally, and we grabbed some folks from and we started this workshop that's called Navigating White Identity. It's the reason people say we're being accused of critical race theory, because we have decided that white people have to do white people's work. So my vision of the future is not just that Harvey and I are friends, but that when I'm with my white friends, I'm working for justice and I'm working for acknowledging what is good, what is being a good white person mean? How do I, we need white churches to do good white justice and wrestle with the issues and not just reach out and it's not just about bridging the friendship barrier, it's really about identifying what is white culture, what is wrapped up in white identity, why is it being, why are we struggling with it? So we've got a series that starts November 2nd, runs for 3 weeks on Tuesday nights from 7 to 8:30 called Navigating White Identity. And it's taught by 4 white people, and it's white people doing white people work at trying to understand these issues of race and identity and undoing kind of the institutional issues that we've kind of grown up with. It's difficult, it's hard, and it's unattractive because it doesn't connect me with my comrades and my peers and my friends. Everybody wants to just have a diverse friendship group, and that's enough for me to just feel good about myself. And we would say, no, we gotta go deeper into what whiteness is all about and who we are. So just a little commercial. On Zoom, it's free, all those good things.
All right, last question. Formally.
First of all, thanks for